Today we are doing Joris Voorn. He has really different styles and different tracks, so I tried to pick something similar to breakbeat, and I'm using a reference track that is called Messiah. So this won't be a remake, but you will clearly hear the resemblance from the reference track. But before I start, have you seen our 4 Producers 1 sample video? Because if you haven't, you should see it, and I will edit here. You should take a look. Really? Seriously? It's cool. Click that. But anyway, I will stop talking now. Let me take you to Ableton and let's do some Joris Voorn style music. So in this genre, it's really important to get the drums right. For example, if you have a melodic techno track or techno track, everything is around the kick drum. But I feel like in this type of more breakbeat style tracks, everything is around actually the snare. So you have to build the snare and build all the percussions around the snare so that you have a nice cohesive drums going on. But to do that, the first thing that we are going to do, pick a kick and make something not 4 to the floor, basically. And I'm going to go to a kick drum that I prepared. I think I had something here. Yeah, this one. It's like a bulky kick, but still a lot of thumb in it. And if I play one more time. If you are making techno, you would always have this kind of 4 to the floor track, but this time we are definitely not interested in this one. So I'm going to make it shorter so that we have a bit more space. So what I'm thinking, like dum, pak, something like that. It's like a very common, one of the most used pattern probably. So let's get that one right first. Because it's repeating itself all the time, I'm going to just bring it to something like this. And the first one is here, it is here, and then dum, ta, dum. So I should probably have something here. And then we will hit one more time here. And then probably we will have another one here. And then it comes back to 3. And for the tempo, this is a bit too slow. We are going to go around like 128. So we will have a faster. I think this one should be here. Yeah, this is much better. Let's put it here as well. And maybe we can like this. It's like dum, 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 basically. I'm not gonna play too much with the kick. This is more than enough. The one thing that I'm going to do is fix a bass so that we can hear that chorus bass on the background. This one is written in the G, so what I'm going to do, just to make it easier for myself, I'm gonna just put the 2 G notes over here. So then kind of stuff. And I'm gonna pick a serum, but you can really use any synth that you like here. So to make the bass stable while making it really chorusy and wide, trick is utilizing different oscillators and combining different unison levels on the different oscillators. So I'm going to turn on the filters and both to here so that we can start here. I'm feeling like maybe it's too much. Let's do it like this actually. I'm going to pick all the notes here and then I'm going to just duplicate by 2. So if I make it here now, and let's not loop it here as well. So I'm going to zoom out, put it here. It will be a bit longer here. Just like that. Let's pick the serum up again. So to make the sound a bit more vintage, I'm going to go for this basic mini softwood. It's just a bit smoother version of the other softwood, really. It feels a bit better, to be honest. So what I'm going to do first, start with this guy. This one is 0 and this one is -1. So this one will be a bit brighter if I play it alone. So I can detune it quite a bit, so it is really, and drive this one a bit more. And then we will take this oscillator, and this time we're going to increase the number. So if you have more oscillators, that will be more oscillators playing at the same time, and it will make the sound a bit more stable. So the full volume exchange changes due to the phasing will be less obvious in this case. So we'll take this. And then finally, I'm going to add one single sine on the bottom with the same one here, -1. So it's really, really gritty bass sound. Less volumes. And there is other things that we can do. First, I'm going to put a bit distortion. Just smooths out the sound really. And depending on how we feel in the track, we can definitely play a bit more. But for now, this is all I need to start with my track. And right afterwards, I'm going to start with my snare, because as I mentioned, for this type of track, snares are really playing the central role. And then you have to really be careful about how you approach to your snares. So what I'm going to do, pick it up here, and then I'm going to go back to my samples. And then I prepare the snare sample, this one. What I tend to do is, or what I see oftentimes, is you always get this more crispy, more high rich snare, so that you can distort it to get even richer, and when it hits, it's more like in your face. So the same idea here, just bring it in here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy 3 times, and we're going to play it around a little bit. The reason being is like there's always never only one single snare. It's more like playing a drum, and each hit will be slightly different, and sometimes you can hit a bit on the side, so the volumes are different, the timbre is different. And sometimes you can even maybe use other percussions around you, almost sounding like a snare. So it's like there's really richness in the snare, and it's one of the easiest way to do it, just duplicating the same snare and playing around. But let's put the initial notes here. So the initial hits that we have the initial drum and snare. So again, we will be playing around with the kick. So let's start. So dum, tss, maybe. And then maybe at the end of here, somewhere around them, and then maybe we can make it bigger, and let's consolidate this one, because I'm going to move this guy probably. Let's turn this off. And then maybe we can add a similar thing, dun. And then one more. It's almost, I think it's all same, both of them. But the reason being that I did it this way is that it is not only one snare that we are going to have. We will have these different layers, playing different things, doing different things. So that will be much more richer than what we have done here. So I'm going to unfold this to start with. And I'm going to go make something a bit more like a snare roll. Like when you drove the snare in, not the snare, but if you like take your stick and drove it in the snare, it will create this kind of really weird sound. And we're going to kind of imitate that sound by taking one of these and making that type of sound. And it's quite easy to make really. What you need to do, just play with the decays and attacks. It's not will be exactly the same like organic, but it will give almost the same feeling. So what I'm going to do, we take this sound here, and then we're going to move this around a little bit so that we can take initial piece, and then we're going to give a little bit fade in so that we will have a smoother, not a snappy, but smoother sound. So if I play it, so it almost feels like I will say the shaker sound. And then we're going to go back now, and we're going to fill this up with this one. Again, it's really up to you how you want to use. It's also up to your drummer, for example, how the drummer will be used. But I feel like it's around the initial hit could be nice. For example, if we take it here, it's almost like it like them. And maybe we have a double here. And this one goes, you can really use this one like a double hits all the time. No problem at all. Like that. And maybe we can have one in the end, like this. Yeah, something like that. And then I will have another one once you are like rolling the snare, but I don't want like a real snare, kind of a rich snare, but I'm gonna have a like smaller version. And to do that, I will take the middle one, and then I'm gonna play around. For example, gonna make it shorter, and then maybe put a bit fade in, and then we can probably put a filter here, make it a bit darker, right? And then if we play it, it's like a more shorter version so that you can actually roll this one because of that without causing too many issues. And I'm going to volume it down a bit as well. So let's volume here. Now we have to decide where we can roll that snare, right? And then it could be also layered, for example, here, like together. and it will sound a bit richer. So I'm thinking like if I take at the end of here, like the first, second bar. Maybe we can put someone here. I'm thinking maybe I'm not really sure about this one. I can think about later, but to start with, this one is good. This one will be just fine to play around. So you can see definitely that this really weird rhythm creates the whole ambience. But I see one single problem here, and it is that when the snare hits, I don't really feel that organic feeling. And one of the easiest way to get organic feeling with any snare, really, you have adding kind of a organic reverb from an organic snare. So I prepared here one for example so that you can hear it. This one is like just was a snare sample, like a regular organic snare sample, and I just add an attack so that we don't hear the initial hit, but we definitely hear the tail. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to delete these two. And let's clean this up here as well so that we can only snare the original one. And what I'm going to do, put this one into the original snare. So we have this tail going on. I'm going to volume it down a bit and play one more time. Now I almost feel like we have different snare samples, and that tail really makes the snare like a snare, I will say. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to group them up, and then we're going to send them to a probably something like this, a room reverb. I will make it a bit brighter because this is in the drum sound, and then we're going to kind of glue them all together. Let's solo this so that we can design a bit better. I'm sending the wrong reverb. It feels like this is good, so let's try to mix them all together one more time. And once we get the snares, it is not enough, simply because we need to make the snares richer with additional kind of percussions. So one of the most utilized example is kind of adding an organic cymbal sound, these small cymbals like percussive cymbals, so that when a snare hits, you hear this kind of cymbal at the same time. So this could be anything really. I like to put the organic sound, and in the reference track it was very similar. So we have this sound here. Some of the drums even do that, like they just hang a snare, these percussions around the snare, so when you hit the snare, this one also makes the sound at the same time. So what we are going to do, utilize exactly the same technique. I'm going to bring this in now here, and maybe we can take, so we have to just pick any of these, really the ones that you like. This already. And then it actually has this kind of nice area that we can utilize. So we can add this one kind of a feeling in sound. I will show you quickly. So what I'm going to do first, let me take this part. This is a really big project, by the way. I'm going to make it faster by just skipping this guy, putting things faster. So like placing these ones all around, it will just take too much. I will just place it very fast. So if I give an example to what I'm trying to explain, you will understand a bit more. For example, here. Let me just solo here so that you can hear with and without. So this one is with, this one is with. It makes the sound much more organic, much more interesting. So what I'm going to do, just place it and come back. So what I did, basically layered it here, and then when I have snare rolls, I just put 2 of them here. Otherwise it becomes a bit too much. And these small areas, like I mentioned, that I took that tail, cut it off, so that we can have a bit more groovy sound. So if I play, rather than using delay and try to get it that way, I used the one that already existed in the sample itself. So if I play with the track, sounds super natural in this way, and I really like it. And once we have this one, we have to also feel kind of a bit answers. Like here, when I play the snare, there's no answer, and not by the percussion. So we have to feel the information or feel the space a bit more, so that everything kind of connected to each other. So there's a second thing that we are going to do. And for that type of sounds, I feel like the shakers quite work if you kind of find a bit more like white noise, a bit more richer. So let's put it here. And then I have this sound that fits really. And what we are looking for now, somewhere that sounds natural. So what I often do is just play it here and then put the first one and then increase it to 2 bars and put the second one and third one and so on. So if we try to put it here as an example, so let's play it. And this one works, but I feel like it makes it a bit more linear. So what I'm going to do, extend it and try to find out. So let's do this one very fast as well. So I moved this one a bit to the left because this one was really not the snare itself. This was the snare slide. So it still worked, and here as well. And I still kept that non-linear sound. So it sounds like this now. And right afterwards, this is still rich and percussive sounding drums. So we need kind of at least the hi-hats and we need shakers. So the first thing that I like to do is the hi-hats. And I like to do kind of, again, you have to keep thinking like a drummer. So you need to, for example, in this case, use a closed hi-hat. In techno, oftentimes you just have rolling 16 hats, but in this case, we won't have it. We would like to have something a bit more groovy, something a bit more like real different. And again, the perfect way to do it really is that just bringing up the hi-hat and try to place it manually one more time. If you were, for example, drummer, if you have, for example, push, you can do it manually by just playing it. But in this case, we have to do it by putting it. So what I'm going to do, just pick a hi-hat sample like this one and put it here. So what we have here, the closed hat like this. Again, it's not rolling hats, but the only thing is that some of them having this open hi-hat. This is the same sample, the shorter and longer version, and open hat sounds like this. And shorter. So basically, like when you open the hat, you don't have the closed hi-hat, so that you have at least this rolling sound going on. And if I play all together. You don't need to really do it like 100% like a drummer, but at least keeping some of the elements from like organic drum playing really helps a lot to build this kind of more urban ambience, I would say. And then finally, we have this one, and this one we have to just throw in a shaker sample or make a shaker yourself to make it really just a bit richer on the high end, because still these are really like a not loud hi-hats, so you need something to feel in the background. And let's do that. And then I have this shaker loop. Let me show you how was it before so that you understand what I did and why I did it. So basically I had this loop, like really long one, and the problem was that I didn't really like the groove it had. It was this like increasing groove, so I took the pieces, like the small pieces and big pieces, and made my own groove. So you can see that the volumes are a bit slightly different. Rather than just throwing into a compressor, I manually like change the volumes. And the other thing over here is if I solve this now, like first putting a frequency shifter, putting it a bit higher in the pitch because we had all this percussion, so it's really busy. Rather than like EQing, carving out, I just pitch it with the frequency shifters a bit up so that filling up that space that way, and put an auto pan and a slide again glue compressor just to glue everything together. And if I play together, you see how much frequency shifter really helps placing the sound right in the mix, because there are other things here already, but when you mix it a bit up and then boost a bit higher like this, it really just sits there without touching or fighting with anything else. So basically we already made our drums. You can actually make it much more richer than this. I'm really using the minimum amount that you can use, but you can definitely make a bit more hats. You can definitely add a bit more percussions, for example. There's a room for that, but you should still keep this urban feeling. So once more, if we play one more time. So it's really cool. And once we have got this, there are some other elements in his track that should be done. And one of the things that he always does and utilizes this kind of plucky sound. And it's quite really easy to make, and timbre will be different depending on what type of synthesizers that you are using. I will just use the Serum because the sound that he used in this track is quite Serum wise. But for example, if you use different filters, different oscillators, different synths, it will be sounding slightly different, but the idea is still the same. So what we are going to do, take this one, search for Serum. So to start with, I'm going to just bring in my, and this part, when this synth plays, actually there is no drums, it's used on the break and in the beginning of the track. So let me bring the MIDI files first. Maybe let's put it here and then just solo the beginning part so that we have something to go on. And if I open the Serum and put adjusted filter, so at least we can hear how it sounds. This kind of really a bit more dramatic loop. Once you are looking for a pluck sound, you can use single oscillator. It's oftentimes actually enough. But if you want to make it a slightly richer, what I like to do is I'm going to go again, pick something a bit more vintage sounding. In this case, it's a basic mini. And I'm going to start with detuning them really ever slightly. You can hear this slight phasing, but I don't want to exaggerate it. And then the second thing, of course, we're going to make it a bit plucky, bring the decay down. Important part here is this, the way you decay the sound. If you do it like this, it gets super plucky, and if you do like this, it is much less plucky. So you can actually play around with this one rather than only playing like this. You can play around like this when you are automating. But let's start like this one and then create a second one and put this one onto the cutoff. I'm gonna Shift Alt click and put it something like this, smaller. Don't do it too much, otherwise it becomes a bit too plucky and his sound is not really that aggressive. And depending on how aggressive you want to go, you can pick the different oscillators. 24 sounds oftentimes much more cleaner. I feel like if you are opening up and want to make it really ambience, with less aggressive filters like 18 or 12 is much better. And then we're going to go to distortion. And a slight parallel. And then you can add actually a slight chorus. And then depending on how you are looking for, in this specific sound it doesn't exist, but you can actually unison this one and this one as well to make more ambient sound. For the original track we don't have this, so I'm gonna keep it one and put a slight EQ here. Let's decrease the Q, so get this super low end out. And then in the original sound there were two things: the delay and the reverb. The delay almost make the sound kind of like repeating itself. So I think it was dotted as well, but there was a filter, so this repeating sound was super dark. And it was ping pong as well. And maybe slight reverb. Yeah. And in the break part, this was automated. So I'm gonna show it later on when everything is put in together. But I think there was a reverb on the origin sound. Like here, you activate the reverb and then mix it up. Like this. And then you also use an EQ like this and then just move it up. But I think this sound is enough for this one to automate later on the track. And the second part is more interesting, is just like a repeating synths, both here in the break part and the original part. So let me put these synths because I think they're not really that interesting in the sound design wise, but it's more important how they utilize in the track itself. So I'm even thinking like put everything down and take a look at the final sound, because we have to explain these automations, so it's much faster way. So the first thing that we are looking in the chorus is this one, and it sounds really simple. It's like something like this. It is really a simple serum patch. Here I just have this sawtooth and add a bit noise, and then just open up the filter a little bit so that we have this high passes through and a lot of unison on top. And the effects side, a bit distortion with the hard clip, chorus, a little bit reverb. The important part is creating this kind of really effect and playing with these dual notes. Almost like this kind of trancey feeling. This type of things are used a lot in trance. There's nothing really on this one. And then you have this main lead. This one is also quite simple sound. And again, I think the reason being is that probably he has a lot of synthesizer, and then when he is designing his sound, he's not really using a lot of LFOs, a lot of routing and so on, but more about the composition itself, using those kind of a bit maybe simpler sounds, more smarter way, so that it's more about the composition than sound design. And this why over here sounds like this. Almost like a ringtone, but this is just really a triangle wave and putting a bit unison and driving it a bit, and then adding a bit distortion. And if I take a look at the notes, really quite simple as well. And together, this one is a resampled version of this sound to create ambience with the long reverb tail. So it basically gives this ambient sound. And if I play here, really, you will understand exactly what I'm trying to say. Let's make it shorter like this. I think it will work. Let's try. It sounds still like, okay, there is still things are missing, and these are really the vocals on top of that, because you don't want super aggressive lead sound if you have a vocal on track, otherwise they will fight. And of course the pads and the ambience. So let's put the pads and let's put everything. It's just pads and a couple of effects, and take a look one more time on the project, and we can go through the different sounds. So what I did really just group them up so that it's easier to explain things around. And so the first thing is the vocal pad. I think he did it from the vocal herself by sampling it, but what I did, of course, just went to my samples and pick a vocal sample. In this case, it's this one. What I'm doing is actually using this mode back and forward and using a bit crossfade here, so that when I play it, it moves back and forward all the time. And just used a bit effects, chorus, a bit EQ, sidechain the kick. And if you take a look at notes, it's just single note but spread out, so that we have more like a chorus feeling in the sound. And on top of that, another low pad. And I think this was just a preset from Serum itself. I just play around so that it's a bit smoother. And then finally, I added a kind of a lead pad sound, occupying a little bit on the high end. Again, this idea is really simple, having these different pads in different areas. Like, I don't use too much notes here because I wanted it simpler, because it's kind of richer sound. And like I mentioned, the trick over here was creating this kind of automations here. And there was one more sound actually in the synth lead that we forget. It is this kind of single hits going all the way up. So if I play it. And the important part here is basically creating this delay groove. So just sanding here on the delay, or here the echo all the time, so it creates this kind of nice groove. But the sound itself is again very simple. It was the same sound that we created, but just the envelope's a bit shorter. And again here, idea is sending it to shimmer when we are going into here. And opening up the attack and opening up the cutoff. And same thing in the arpeggio as well. Like we had this arp, and then we are sending with the reverb. A lot of automation going on. The first thing is the EQ8. I'm cutting all the lows here when we are approaching the break. And then I have the filter cutoff, increasing all the way up, and then reverb amount increasing here, so the sound gets a bit more ethereal, more deeper. So if I play here and here, it really creates the ambience. And we are also sending this shimmer reverb, shimmer meaning that it's a big reverb with a lot of decay time, really bright as well, so it creates this really big ambience here. And then we go into the drop, and there is just single vocals here. And then on top of that, it's really white noise riser here. And that's it. And I think I had one more. Yeah, no, nothing really. That's all, I guess. If I quickly check one more time, we are not missing anything. The perks, the things that we done, open, closed, and so on. But I think that's it. So let's play start to end so that you can actually hear everything. And I will try to show more automation so that you can also see that. So let's go. And yeah, that's it. A really, really cool track, to be honest. And again, the project file will be available on my Patreon. So if you want to really take a close look to all the elements, because we have quite a bit of them here, you can just go there and get it there. And once more, if you haven't seen the 4Produce 1 sample video, don't forget to check them up. It's probably here somewhere around now. But other than that, I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.